control. Gravity is
And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's edition, Friday edition of our Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you guys are here with us tonight. This is a momentous night here in the Portal, and one that I'm really super excited to bring to you guys because this is going to be an epic conversation with an absolutely epic guest. So really looking forward to it, but I hope you guys are doing great. Remember that you can, of course, always watch it live on youtube.com/paranormal portal. If you want to see all the mayhem that goes into making each and every one of these live, then head over to Paranormal Portal channel on YouTube. But we are live here tonight. This is live and unscripted, but we have a very special guest joining us tonight. Our guest tonight is he is a psychic. He is a published author. He is an esoteric teacher, as well as a profound exorcist, and working all around the globe. So without further ado, let me welcome our special guest, Mr. Jeffrey Seelman. Welcome, sir. Welcome to the portal.
Brent, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's an absolute honor, and I really look forward to this opportunity because, you know, this is one of those sides of the paranormal, especially when you're dealing with things like exorcism. It's been so Hollywoodized, and yet it is an incredibly profound and horrible thing for someone to have to go through, to endure, and it leaves many people, you know, just in shambles. And the fact that there are people like yourself out there that help and are willing to step in and to, you know, to restore that balance and that life that they knew before this darkness is just incredible. And you know, my hat's off to you.
Oh, thank you very much. It has been quite a journey. I've been doing this kind of work for 27 years. Mm-hmm. I was born with psychic ability. Okay. I did not know that. I didn't know what that was. I thought everybody could see spirits. Mm-hmm. I thought everybody remembered all of their dreams. And also, something I forgot, my mother told me a few years before she died. She died in 2001. I was born in 1959. Mm-hmm. She said that I used to come in and say, "Hey, Grandma's going to call tomorrow at 3:27.
Wow.
And that would happen every single time. And so I forgot about that. and it just, she reminded me that, you know, yeah, I was doing some of that too, but it was difficult. You know, I would be in the classroom, mm-hmm. and I would see these luminescent beings in elementary school. This was back in the early 1960s. Mm-hmm. And some of them would be like leaning over the desk, it seemed, trying to help in some way telepathically the kid that was sitting in the desk. Mm-hmm. And then there were other spirits in the room, not many, you know, maybe, you know, 2 or 3 at a time, but there's always one that seemed to be there for negative purposes and that, you know, would look at me and then try to frighten me. The other ones might glance around and see that I could see them, and then turn right back around. They were not concerned because they were good spirits.
Mm-hmm.
But negative spirits, would try to frighten me because I had no idea what I was looking at. And so I'd end up running out of the classroom, which caused some difficulty when I was growing up.
Oh, I can't imagine. That must have been a real tormented childhood. Now, was your family really supportive of this, or did they catch that you had a gift very early on, or was that something that didn't come out for till much later?
Both. My family was not supportive of it,
Oh,
mainly because it was causing trouble in the classroom, and also they didn't like the idea of me telling them things that were going to happen in the future. And it wasn't world events. It
right.
was simply, somebody's going to call, this is going to happen, postman's going to be here at 10:05. It was small stuff.
Uh-huh.
But they were concerned, and they did have me tested. I had to go into a hospital and have electrodes put on my head and all that. All this happened in the first 5 years of my life.
Hmm.
And the diagnosis at that time was, an ESP type situation. They called it something different. I mean, they had different terminology, but that was their diagnosis. And so that gave them a little bit of peace. How I dealt with it was I stopped talking about it.
Oh yeah.
I simply, when I saw these things, I simply paid no attention to them to the best of my ability. And then I started to make friends because I was not making friends,
Hmm.
that way. Also, I was very, very sensitive to emotional energies. I actually went to a very beautiful brick elementary school, grade 1 through 6 here in the United States. And it was the same school my parents went to, both my parents. And so it was an old school, very well maintained, but because it was an old school, there was a lot of emotional energy
Right.
that accumulated in the classroom from all the little kids like
Hmm.
me that had been in the classes over the years. And so I was very uncomfortable in the classroom itself. I could feel this emotional energy.
Hmm.
And I can tell you, Brent, that I had my eyes on the clock and on the window, looking out the window for really most of my school years.
Right.
I didn't do all that well in school. When I applied myself and I was able to get out of there, I got A's.
Right.
But I was in the classroom, I was just a mess, and I couldn't even look at the teacher really. It was just the clock and the window, and it's like, when am I going to get out of here? I
Right.
am just not comfortable in here.
Hmm. And so you came to terms with it as you grew then, or how did it finally develop into a place? Was it just the ignoring made you able to have a normal life, and that it just was kind of always there, but you just didn't address it, or did you ever actually come to a balance with it in your younger life?
Brent, I never had a normal life. When I was
Okay.
4 years old, as I mentioned in my first book, I actually woke up and there were two giant eyes staring at me. And
Oh.
I was 4 years old. And so when I sat up in bed, I was asleep. And I sat up in bed with a start. And gradually I could make things out. And these two eyes separated. And I noticed what they were two small beings in uniform. And I say uniform because they were wearing the exact same kind of thing and had some kind of weird writing on them. And what those eyes were actually lights that were self illuminating. They were not shining in my eyes, but they were self illuminating and they were on their chests.
Wow. Oh
And
man.
so I recognized them right away as some kind of device.
Oh.
That essentially I could figure out that this was some kind of device that they were wearing. One of them had moved around my bed a little bit, but I was always able to tell when people around me or spirits had negative intentions, even back then. I felt no negative intentions from these two beings. They made no
Mm.
moves toward me besides one of them moving around a little bit. I think they actually could sense that I was very frightened, and they moved apart so I wouldn't think it was a giant spider,
Hmm.
or some kind of, I did. That's the first thing I thought, that it was some kind of giant spider. And I would, used to, watch these, different science fiction TV programs and all
Sure.
that. And I thought, well, this is some kind of monster in my room, but it turned out to be two aliens.
Wow.
How I dealt with this is that I just stopped talking about it, but because I would get information about things that were about to happen, especially dangerous things, warning signs, like a little bell would go off in my head. I'd get a feeling
Mm-hmm.
that something was about to happen. It kept me out of trouble. So I very rarely got caught doing all the naughty things that young boys do.
Sure.
And when I was in high school, 74 to 1978, the same high school both my parents went to. Also, there was lots of emotional energy in that
Sure.
uh, those buildings as well. Very nice high school. But what they used to use me for is back then in the 70s, the kids would go outside and smoke cigarettes or something else.
Sure.
And they would bring me out there because, for the most part, that I would be able to give them a 30-second warning when the teachers were going to come out of the door, because this was right outside the door. Something you can't even do today, But
Right.
we were on a busy street. The high school was on a corner of two busy streets,
Uh-huh.
and so we had the police coming by sometimes. We also had teachers coming out, and had a group of 5 or 6 or 7 students out there doing things we were not supposed to be doing. And so I would just get this feeling, and then I would run.
Um,
And very soon after that, everybody started running with me. First, they would say, "Why are you running? Somebody's coming." Well, ha ha ha. And all of a sudden, 30 seconds later, a teacher would come bursting through the door. "What are you kids doing?" And after that, they started pulling me out with them. And sometimes they didn't have to pull me out.
sure.
And so it's like, "Okay, Jeffrey, let us know," and it'd say, "Okay, you got 30 seconds. Let's go." Everybody
Oh,
just run around the building. Teacher would come out, or a police car might kind of roll up, and then we were around the building already, and consequently, we never got caught.
you were like their radar from MASH.
I were radar, and I should get some credit from that. I went to my high school reunion 5 years ago, and we didn't talk about it, but I thought, I really saved you guys a lot of times,
Yeah,
by giving
absolutely.
you these really great warnings and stuff. So, I think I should get like a free drink out of that, an
You
extra hors
should.
d'oeuvre. I
Absolutely.
didn't say that, but so long ago. It was great catching up with everybody. But yeah, that's how I used it. I didn't talk about the psychic ability anymore. I knew
Hmm.
that I had it
Right.
because I was simply becoming more and more psychic as I was growing up,
Hmm.
and just naturally. Oh, just one second. I
Sure. Do what you got to do. Very cool. And so this has been a lifelong uh, ability for him. It wasn't something that just turned on as a matter of some kind of event. It was something he was born with. So I think that's very powerful. Very, very
oh,
powerful.
sorry. My cat ordered a very expensive package, and she's disappointed if I don't get it. So I had to
Oh,
press a buzzer.
no worries.
And
Welcome back.
okay. So, anyways, uh, that's how I did it. I really didn't talk about it, and my friends didn't talk about it either. It was just something that was.
Hmm.
And I think maybe they would have made something more of it today in 2018. I don't think one decade is better than another. It's just the way it was in the 70s. We just didn't really talk about it. It was just, for some reason, Jeffrey knows when trouble's coming. And I also had that ability when I was, alone, or in situations where I was, in meeting people or out at parties and stuff. I would get this feeling that something negative was just about to happen, something.
Right.
And so I got out of there, even if other people decided not to follow me or leave. At least I didn't get caught.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So consequently, I never got caught doing anything in my life. I didn't steal anything. I'm not a thief or a criminal, but I mean
Sure.
that little stuff that people do.
Right.
I always was able to get a little jump on it, and that's still true today.
Hmm. So now your journey continues, and when did you start doing the type of professional work that you do now, the exorcisms and the cleansings and the teaching and helping people?
After I graduated from high school in 1978, I went into the Air Force.
Okay.
And after I got out of the Air Force, I started studying self-help books for my own reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Which just wasn't gelling with the major religions, even though I was searching, because I really thought there was something to the general idea of life after death and spirits and all of that, because I could see them. So there must be something out there.
Right.
So I studied everything from spirit communication to how to do Ouija boards and how people communicated with spirits throughout time,
Mm-hmm.
and and even touched on the concept of what they did about negative spirits back in history.
Mm-hmm.
In 1990, I met a girl, and she was a professional psychic, and she was a very good one too, and she still is.
Mm-hmm.
And I started going to some of their sessions, essentially Ouija board sessions. I wasn't even sitting at the table. I was actually like 3 rows back. They had kind of a inner circle,
Uh-huh.
and then I was just kind of a guest, even though that I knew her, and we were kind of starting to go out. And so what had happened was that this group was very good at metaphysical things,
Mm-hmm.
but one of the people in the group was having a problem, and uh, felt that he was a writer, and he felt there was something in his apartment, and they had all tried to get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
They all had all tried these different methods, sage or whatever, and frankincense, and which are good things, but it didn't get rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, and I, knowing what I had been studying, they said, well, why not give Jeffrey a shot?
Right.
Because I was kind of moving in closer and closer into the inner circle, as because they were really getting very good messages, or obviously, coming from somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went over there, and I got rid of the problem actually very quickly. The people had been working on it for a couple of years actually, and I went in there and sort of almost like channeling. I wasn't quite sure what to do. I just kind of went with the flow and just did my own thing. And because I was able to feel negative emotional energy,
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a force move through me that actually I could see pushing away the negative energy. So not only could I see spirits, but I could also see negative emotional energy.
Uh-huh.
I still, I can still see it. I mean, actually better than ever. These kind of talents don't go away. They actually get better if you let them throughout the years.
Mm-hmm.
And so it worked. And just a couple of months later, another member of the group who was a member of their inner circle, she was also a professional psychic. At that time, I was not involved in any business. I was working for a cable company, and uh, she had a problem too. She was seeing too many clients, uh, and so uh, she said, I think there's something going on, Jeffrey, in my house, and
Mm.
I just can't get rid of it. Can you come over and take a look? You worked for this person, and I went over there and I got rid of the problem.
Wow. Okay.
And they said, you know what, you got something. We've been trying for 2 years, and these people were really good at what they did. They knew clearing techniques.
Wow.
They knew really good metaphysical clearing techniques that worked. Some of them were professional psychics,
Uh-huh.
and they even did like some kinds of clearings on people and things, some energy work. And so they said, why don't you bring this to the public?
Hmm.
And I did. I said, okay. And I started with a really tiny ad in a local newspaper, a little box ad that cost $15.
Mm-hmm.
I got no phone calls, and it didn't dissuade me. Uh, I I thought, I don't know where this was going to go. I had a daytime job anyway. I wasn't really concerned, but this, woman I was with, now I'm 32 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and she was a couple years older than me, and she said, she was doing this since she was a kid, and she said, it took me over 20 years before I was really good at doing this and became noticed. And I mean, I've been doing this since I was a kid, and I was doing readings, professionally when I was a teenager, and all this. It just takes years, Jeffrey, to build a reputation. So don't expect that to happen so quickly.
Right.
And I took her advice because she really was a great psychic, and I thought, you know what, I'm not going to quit just because nobody has called me. And what had happened was the same paper, it was a local newspaper that I put the box ad in, decided to. They said, you have a really interesting business.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do an article on you? And I said, sure. And so they, came over to my apartment and did a long interview and took some pictures, which I was very nervous about. Here I was nervous, just standing there outside with a guy taking a few pictures of me. And I was like, trying to smile, thinking, how long do I have to smile for, And now I think back on that after doing national television shows and 1,000 radio shows and all that. And I think, wow, how frightened I was because I was very shy.
Sure.
And in some ways I still am. And so they did turned out to be a 3-page article with lots of pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of started the ball rolling. And then I started I got a business manager. He volunteered. He was a graduate of communications at a famous university, and said, "I'll do it for free.
Wow.
I just want to get involved in all this." And he kind of got me some work, and even some work with the Catholic Church because he was in touch with them and stuff, and they needed a little help on a project they were working on, and.
Wow.
Which was an exorcism, essentially, but not of a person, but of one of the buildings of their university.
Oh, wow.
Was having a long-term problem that they could not get rid of. And they said, well, why don't we let you take a whack at it, Jeffrey? So I met with the dean of the university, and I said, I won't discuss which university or show the videotapes. It was videotaped by 2 people. They locked us in for the entire night.
Oh, man.
So it was an all-nighter. So we have 2 videotape people, a couple of psychics, and an exorcist, or me, And so I go in there, and we have doors opening and closing by themselves and all of that. All this on videotape, which could never be shown. And I did a ritual, and I was able to get rid of the problem.
That's really cool.
And which was just, there used to be that building used to be a hospital, that particular building. And so of the major university, and that essentially had drawn negative energy, produced negative energy from people suffering, and then had drawn essentially some negative spirits that had nothing better to do than scare college students.
That's really cool.
So, yeah, it was interesting. And so that led to an appearance on a television show, the only television show that was on at the time in the United States, and it was called Sightings. And Sightings used to be on the Paramount Network, and it was on late at night. And the 3 girls had called me up and said there were 3 young professional women, all very nice looking. And the reason I say nice looking is because of why they were attacked. They had complained about taking a shower and seeing shadows pass over the curtain, waking up with feeling that somebody was hugging them, and then nobody was there, but there was an indentation in the bed next to them. And so they called me up and said, Jeffrey, would you please come out and clear our condominium? It was 3 girls had rented a condominium, or they owned it. I don't really know. I didn't ask them that. And so at that same time, Sightings had contacted me, and they said, what are you working on right now? And I said, this particular case, but, so they got in touch with the girls, or the girls got in touch with them. I'm not really sure. I just gave contact information to the women, so I imagine they called them. And they said, no, we'll bring out our film stuff, our film crew from Los Angeles. And the girls said, no. They said, we can't wait. One of the girls have already left temporarily, and we cannot wait 3 days. Wow. And so that only intrigued Sightings more. They said, fine, we'll put you in a hotel, all of you, separate you from Jeffrey so you cannot speak, and then we'll come out, and on Saturday we'll all get together and go through the whole thing, and then Jeffrey will do an exorcism and hopefully get rid of your problem. We'll film the whole thing. And that's exactly what happened. I went out there, and so I kind of went from doing a couple cable television shows, just somebody following me around once in a while, which was nothing, and then to doing the largest and the only national television show on the paranormal at the time.
Yeah.
And it was really frightening. I was terrified.
I'll bet you.
And it was a hot day, summer day here in Wisconsin, and basically they had to close the windows because of the traffic. Mm-hmm. And in order to get the interviews right. And I started sweating, not so much in the face, but on my back. And I was just like, well, but the important thing is this. Yeah. I actually got rid of the problem.
Good for you.
And you can still watch that video on YouTube. And the girl who is a psychic actually assisted me in that and really helped out.
Wow.
And I did the exorcism, but she was also able to help locate where the spirit was essentially hiding out.
Yeah.
They tend to hide out and create energy, and they feel comfortable in this negative energy. Oh. It really helped. You can watch the YouTube video still out there, and
so Jeffrey,
of the actual episode.
Yeah, I did watch that this last week, and it was really, really well done, and that was fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, I would suggest you do it, except not now. Wait till after the show. But we're going to be heading to our first break of the night here, and of course, we'll be back with more from Mr. Jeffrey Seelman. But again, if you're hearing the sound of my voice but not seeing it, and you're curious about the magic that is the Paranormal Portal, and you'd like to see Jeff and I on camera doing this thing, then head over to Paranormal Portal channel on YouTube, and you can check it out live. But we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. Don't go away.
Right back.
No hype, no fear. We are EFR, your protection from deception.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and I'm absolutely thrilled that you're here with me. But tonight's an extra special night here on the Portal, as I'm joined by Mr. Jeffrey Seelman, who is an author, a psychic, a esoteric teacher, and exorcist. And welcome back, Jeff. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, it's just great. Thank you for having me.
Now, it's really great to have you here. And let me ask you now, we had just talked about your sightings episode, and it's an episode that I watched this last week, and it was really cool because I used to watch sightings all the time, and I probably actually saw that episode back in the 90s when it was happening, but I used to love that show. But why is it? And here's the thing. You're going through this house, and you guys are discussing where could like a portal or a vortex or whatever be. And as soon as you guys said that, I went, in the basement. and then of course, that you guys both agreed it's in the basement. Why is it always in the basement? What is it with basements?
In that particular case, it was very out of the way. Spirits, like negative spirits, first of all, I should say this.
Mm-hmm.
Most people are good, some are not. Most spirits are good, some are not.
Sure.
So, every spirit is not bad. Most of them are very good. But negative spirits like to be in an atmosphere where they feel empowered.
Okay.
And that would be, they kind of create something like a spider web, but it's actually made of energy. It does not look like a spider web, but it's the same kind of principle of essentially they surround themselves with negative emotional energy, and they don't want us to know that they're there. And so instead of actually creating that in somebody's bedroom where it's more obvious, where the dog could find it, saying dogs are very good at sniffing these things out on a telepathic level, they tend to try to stay out of the way if they're going to create a sustained attack on a home. They're also capable of moving from home to home, meaning that they could hit 20 houses in a night and not be staying in any one of them. So spirits don't necessarily, and by that I mean negative spirits, they don't necessarily live in your home. They might stop by for 10 minutes and do some scaring and some damage emotionally to you, and whatever they can to scare and disrupt your life and your family or your business, and then they'll move on. That's actually more common than what I call a territorial attack, meaning that they're in the home and they feel that they're going to push you out because it belongs to them. That's far less common. It does happen, but it is less common. In this case, it turned out, you saw the episode, that I had discerned, spirits communicate telepathically. When we die, we don't have a physical body. We have a non-physical body that we generate. We generate it by actually thinking about it and forming it. That's why old people suddenly look young.
Oh, okay.
And so there's a science to it. And in this case, the spirit, because I could read its mind and it could read my mind, it works both ways.
Sure.
That essentially I discerned that it was a voyeur spirit. It was actually out to spy on these girls and have some kind of sexual contact with them to the best of its ability. It's not physical, but it certainly could feel their energy fields. And it was probably, doing negative things while it was alive.
Oh,
And so I had taken a really strong interest in these three young women, and that's why I had mentioned at the beginning that they were very attractive, they were very young,
right.
and that's who he was looking for. And so that's nothing to do with me. It was to do with why the spirit attacked them.
Right, right.
Young professional women, and they were sort of an easy target. They couldn't see anything besides, these shadows and indentations and the after effects and more. And so I got rid of that. But spirits, the most common form of possession is temporary possession.
Okay.
And that happens when, say, a person abuses drugs or alcohol, or is really mentally unstable, and they step out for a little while, essentially blackout, and something else steps in.
Hmm.
That's not the case always.
Sure.
I mean, some people just lose it and they do crazy things.
Right.
But that also, and when they do lose control, and I'm not talking about alcohol use or drug use, I'm talking about abuse,
Oh,
that when they step out and blackout, that it makes it that much easier for something else to quickly step in, take charge, and get them to do something that they would not normally do. And as I said, it's very important to understand that that is not the scenario in every case.
hmm,
So it's not like you can't use that as an excuse in a court of law that a spirit made me do that, because that's just not. This only happens in a percentage of these violent events. But I also think it does play into some of the major violent events, not only on a world scale, but also on small scales of things that are happening, with some of the bombings that we have and shootings that we have,
hmm.
including some of the school shootings, I think, are amplified by negative spirits. And I don't want to say that, this is the fault of negative spirits, because that's just not the case, but they can amplify people's angers. They
Uh-huh.
come close to us and they generate huge amounts of rage
Hmm.
and anger telepathically, and that comes into our energy field. Some people call it the aura, but essentially it's our spirit,
Hmm.
and it amplifies us. And we kind of go into something like a road rage. You know how the nicest people we are when we drive, we're driving along really nice,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden somebody cuts in front of us and we become mad killers.
Right.
I'm going to kill that person. I want to kill him. He pulled in front of me. We're not really like that, and it's kind of like that, that we can, with some amplification, something that happens either on the outside or on the inside can cause us to suddenly feel a lot of rage. Negative spirits know that.
Mm.
And it should be said that there are two major distinct kinds of negative spirits. People who are dead and continue to do negative things. They were probably doing negative things when they were alive, and they were negative people.
Hmm.
And they continue to do negative things. That's the most common type of negative spirit. The second most common, which is actually farther up the scale, which is kind of like the counterpart of an angel in power, is called the demonic spirit.
Hmm.
They may never have lived a physical life, or have not lived one in a long, long time. They're very dangerous and very powerful. And when the wind is right, and what I mean by that is that there's a lot of negative emotional energy in the atmosphere, or it's been charged between people, or there's something happening inside of that person. Sometimes a demonic spirit is able to affect the physical world, because the physical world is connected to the non-physical world. The
Mm.
non-physical world has a lot of terminology associated with it. Most people call it heaven
Mm.
or hell or anything, the other side, whatever you want to say. But the idea is that this is where they live and this is where they operate from. But each one of us here listening to this show, you, I, and everybody listening, are both a spirit and a living human being at the same time. We have a physical body that is being animated by a spirit, and that spirit lives and operates on that level of all spirits.
Oh, okay. So we have a foot in each world, then, is what you're saying.
We do, and that operates all the time until the day that we die. and then our physical body drops, essentially, whether we're in a hospital bed or we fall on the floor or whatever happens to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of us becomes fully a spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And there are philosophies out there that say, well, when we leave, when that happens, that day when that happens, we leave all of our problems behind. It's not true. The soul is not a battery. The spirit is not a battery. The soul and the spirit is the same thing, just different terminology.
Sure.
That contains our personality, our emotional systems, and also our psychological systems. So I offer no hope for people who think that when they die, they're going to leave their emotional problems here on Earth,
right,
or psychological problems, or that somehow they're magically going to be forgiven and absolved of all of their negative deeds. That's not going to happen. That's my opinion.
okay,
The only thing that happens is your physical body separates from your spirit, and you are the same. And in my first book, I discussed that. I have memories of actually dying in a couple of different past lives, and not only just dying, but what happens afterwards. And what happens afterwards is nothing.
So,
meaning that you would know that you're dead unless you looked at your body lying there in the hospital bed. That's how much you change. You don't change at all. Your physical body ceases to function.
Mm-hmm.
You do not.
Yeah.
You're still Brent. I'm still Jeffrey.
Sure.
The audience out there listening is still the audience.
Yeah. Now that's oftentimes you hear in paranormal investigations the spirits may not know they're dead, and that's the case where they drop dead, but they didn't realize they dropped dead, and so they're still continuing on as if they were alive.
It happens. Different traditions and religions teach things according to how they understand them.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not very well. And so there's this concept, that you're supposed to wait around. So you die, you lay in your grave, and wait for somebody to come and get you or whatever, or go to the light, which is actually a smarter move. Now, but spirits get lost. Mm-hmm. And when essentially a spirit propels themselves by thinking about it, by the process of visualization. The process, you can't visualize going from Los Angeles to New York. You're just going to stand there. You have to get on an airplane or drive or something. But a spirit can actually propel themselves by the power of their mind.
Okay.
And we have that same mind. We just are not able to do these things because we're trapped or we are inside of our physical body for a period of time here. And so we can't do those things. We can do these things with our minds,
mm-hmm.
Some people, and it can be trained to do such things, but I teach a little bit of that. But the idea that spirits can actually move from one place to another so quickly that they don't always understand it when they first die. So when they're first dead, the first thing they want to do is say, I got to tell my brother that I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And before they know it, they've actually propelled themselves automatically to their brother's residence, where across the country or across the world, where the brother can't see them. They're saying, hey, I'm okay. I'm here. I'm here. Yeah. How many times have we heard people who have had near-death experiences
mm-hmm.
And they've come back, in the hospital, and, they're floating above the room, their heart stopped, and they're trying to get their, and they're saying, hey, I'm here. I'm okay. I'm okay. Right. I'm fine.
Yeah.
And they also have to report things, of they're seeing of a light, should I go into that or should I not? And they have maybe have a conversation with the spirit, no, it's not your time, go back.
Yes.
These are very realistic things that happen, that we really, some people really don't know that they're dead, and they've been taught that, that they have to either wait for Judgment Day or, they have to sit around and wait for somebody to come and get them. And it's not always the case. And they have to, they get trapped. And sometimes I have to deal with these spirits, and I'm very gentle with them when I find them, that they're hanging around somebody's house or a bar or a restaurant or somebody's business.
Mm-hmm.
They gravitate to where they used to work, where they used to live. Other people's homes or where they want to go, and they just don't know what to do. Now, there are spirits out there there's this concept that spirits sit on clouds, or they sing in a choir for the eternity, or they walk the streets of gold. Does that not sound really boring to everyone? I mean, you want to walk back and pace back and forth, and hopefully there's a park bench. You're walking the streets of gold. That's not going to happen. Spirits actually are very busy. Not only do they look at their lives, your perceptions actually change. Once you're out of your physical body, your perceptions start to become greater. Not always right away, but usually pretty soon. Depends what you died from and what your mental state was at. And sometimes there's a little bit of healing involved, but you start to perceive things a little bit better. But yeah, spirits become lost. And so when I go into a house and I clear it out, or I do it distance, we'll talk about that, that I clear out the entire structure of the home of negative emotional energy, and also any spirits that are in there. Positive spirits do not live in your homes.
Okay.
There's this myth out there that, I get this even from other psychics, that, I have this grandmother spirit in my home and she bakes cookies, and so I let her live in my home. And I say, that's not a good idea. I said, if somebody knocked on your door, yes, a kind old lady, and she said, I want to live in your home and I want to bake cookies. Are you really going to let her in? No. So why would you let a spirit live in your home? For one thing, why would they bake cookies in your home? They're certainly not for you. She can't bake physical cookies. Spirits actually can take energy and mold them into something that looks like a cookie and eat them, but you can't eat them. And so there's no purpose of them being there. So if they're there, it's problematic. There's something wrong with them, essentially. They're not supposed to be there.
Okay.
Now, there's a lot of people who are going to argue that point with me, but I have a zero tolerance for spirits living in people's homes. Your spirit guides are not going to live in your homes. They're going to come down. They're going to give you some great inspiration, some good feelings, maybe a great business idea, and then they're going to give you your privacy. They're going to leave.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great point, and that's something that I remember Chris and I were having a discussion about that too, and he was on the show and he's like, yeah, Jeffrey told me, hey, if there's a if there's a spirit hanging around there, you probably want to move them on because something's not right. Then, and would you let a stranger come and stand in your house and watch you? And that's a great point. It's a really unique point of view, and I can appreciate that a lot, but what could be wrong in those situations? So that's a situation where a spirit didn't go to the light and is just kind of lingering and not really sure what to do in that case?
There really is no such thing as a light.
Okay.
The light is actually just a beacon. It's kind of like a lighthouse.
Okay.
It's telling you to move away from the physical realm.
Okay. All right.
So the light basically is come this way. It's not really a portal so much. It's just, as I said, a lighthouse. And the idea is that the farther you move away from the physical realm, then you move into where other spirits essentially live, which is an infinite amount of space.
Okay.
It's not like a city. They have cities on the other side. I do travel to these places, and I'm able to do that as well. And I've looked around and been all through that. And but the idea is that it's an infinite amount of space, and so spirits like to create their own homes out of this energy that is on the other side. And this energy is not a limited amount of energy. It is an infinite amount of energy, and that is essentially what makes its way up into the physical realm. What they're working on right now, and the scientists are quite correct with the string theory, the way this, that essentially the strings vibrate, creating different kinds of physical things. So I have no argument with physical science. I actually get along with them very well. What they don't understand is where the strings come from. That's my job. And so essentially the strings come from the non-physical part of reality, which is the non-physical portion of the universe says. It's best to say universes being two, one being physical, one being non-physical. And on the non-physical side, there are also multiple levels as well. So the other side is completely non-physical. Spirits do not have any physical attributes. What they do is they generate an image of a physical body, what they look like or what they want to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And they also generate clothing. It's not made of cloth. Most people do not report seeing naked spirits. If you study all the different spirits that, and through all the different shows and books we've read, they're always, wearing some kind of either robes or clothing from our time or some other time. That's deliberate.
Okay.
They are generating what looks like clothing. And people ask me all the time, Jeffrey, why do they do that if they really don't have a physical body? They're just generating an image of a physical body from their spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and they're generating clothing. Why do they do that? And I tell them the truth, because they like to look good.
Ah, okay. Well, now, what about in the case of orbs, Jeffrey? What is the situation with orbs? Because many people have witnessed spirits in the form of orbs, or they believe that that's spirits. Are those indeed spirits, or is that an alternate manifestation?
I don't see these things as much as other people do, so I'm not quite sure what they're seeing. But because it's been reported to me so often for all these years, I've been working in this field for 27 years.
Mm-hmm.
They are essentially the counterpart of, say, insects, cats, dogs, that kind of thing. You're seeing just a part of them,
Mm-hmm.
because cats and dogs and insects and other life forms, sentient life forms, all have individual souls,
Mm-hmm.
just
Sure.
like we do.
Okay, I believe
And
that.
so it's very important to understand that they are not just things. They actually have souls, and I can see them as well. And most pet owners would agree with that. Orbs, it also could be a energy or life form that is not or never was alive in the
Okay.
physical realm. So it could be more than one thing.
Okay.
I really don't see orbs, and I really never have, and maybe it's just because I see a spirit in its whole shape,
Sure.
as opposed to a part.
Now.
But I really think, from what people have described to me over the last 27 years, that orbs are probably more than one kind of thing.
Okay.
That maybe that, essentially, that they're their own particular kind of life form on a non-physical level, or that they are what people see as much as they can see of what actually is a larger unit
Okay.
of larger being, essentially.
That's interesting. Yeah, on two occasions in my life, I've actually witnessed in front of me, right in front of me, two orbs, and both times they look like little glowing gold balls. And one time it drifted right in front of my eyes, about a foot away from my face, just slowly drifting by like it was checking me out. And at the time, I didn't know what the hell it was. I was about 24 or 5 years old at the time. I didn't know what orbs were. But I was like, what the hell's this little ball doing? And then I'm like, hey, should I grab it? And then I thought, no, I should not grab it. I don't know what it is. So I decided not to. And then it drifted away and disappeared. And the last time that I saw an orb was about, I don't know, 3 months ago or so now, in the house that I'm living in. I woke up in the morning to get coffee, and that's like my first thing I'm thinking about, because I'm just not a real morning person. So I'm on my way to the kitchen from the bedroom, and out from around the cupboard comes this little golden ball again, shooting around the cupboard about a foot or foot and a half off the floor, goes right by my legs and disappears. It's like, wow, there's another one.
Maybe you should have poured 2 cups of coffee, Brent.
I didn't realize I had
Just
company.
yeah. I think something has taken an interest in you, and that's a good thing.
Okay, good.
I haven't really heard much about any of them doing any damage.
Sure.
They might scare people because people don't know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as attacking people, I really haven't received a lot of reports of that. Usually what I get are people who are afraid of them, and they feel, because they see them, they feel that they're under attack by them.
Sure.
But I really haven't heard. It's kind of like the Sasquatch, thing.
Uh-huh.
That creature out there that probably does exist, that is doing everything it can to avoid us.
Right. Exactly.
An obvious sign of intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because we're trying to shoot it,
Yeah.
and so one of the things I had proposed several years ago, I used to work for a university, and somebody had mentioned, one of my higher ups had mentioned to me that they had caught one. It turned out to be a radio show hoax in the town that she lived in.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I was very angry. I said, why would you do that? Why do you, shoot something just to take it apart or put it in a zoo?
Mm-hmm.
Because one of the things I said is, how do we know these things are great at disappearing?
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah.
What if they're not terrestrial? What if these are aliens?
True. Yeah.
And so, what happens if we send an astronaut to another planet, and someday we will, and they decide to put us in a cage? How would we feel about it? Hey, look at these little creatures from Earth or whatever. Let's shoot them.
Yeah.
And if they live through it, we'll put them in a cage, and people can pay to see them. We wouldn't want to be treated like that, and really, no creature should be treated like that. And we should really leave them alone.
Amen.
And so, but I also think it's really good. I think it's a positive thing for people to try to get in contact with their higher powers or spirits, or the concept of God. I've always believed in God. I don't know what God is, but I have always believed that since there are spirits out there, and I've talked with so many different spirits and also alien spirits, and I talk about that in my book, because there are just billions and billions and billions and billions of planets out there.
Sure.
And so there's, George Norrie asked me once, do you think the universe has life in it? And I said, the universe is teeming with life, George.
Yeah.
And so we don't know. Some of these things are, not necessarily terrestrial.
Right.
And we don't know who is who. And so I think it's a very good idea to actually communicate with your higher powers and higher spirits, and, communicate with God. You don't have to hear these spirits. They hear you when you pray or try to talk to them.
We're going to go to our next break. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, in a few minutes. Don't go away.
Proud.
Play their games. Everybody loves to place their bets. They don't understand the price I paid. They don't care to comprehend. Trace their lines upon my body, ripping scars across my heart. Raging anger pours inside me as their lies keep falling apart. ready. Just make sure that you're well fed.
Caroline is not like those she's with. They're attracted to the one thing about her that is different from themselves. Her life force is very strong. It gives off its own illumination. It is a light that implies life and memory of love and home and earthly pleasures. Something they desperately desire, but can't have anymore. Right now, she's the closest thing to that.
Poltergeists are usually associated with an individual. Hauntings seem to be connected with an area. A house, usually.
Poltergeist disturbances are of fairly short duration, perhaps a couple of months. Hauntings can go on for years.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Paranormal Portal. I'm your host, Brent Thomas, and we are absolutely burning through this Friday night, and it's a great metric to whenever it's a great conversation, because I have absolutely no idea when the breaks are coming up anymore, and we kind of ran headfirst into that one, and that's my mistake, but I was just so engrossed into the conversation, I wasn't paying attention, so oops. But welcome back to our special guest, Mr. Jeffrey Seelman, who is a psychic, esoteric teacher, educator, and exorcist here on the Paranormal Portal with us tonight. Thanks for being here again, Jeffrey.
Happy to be here, Brent.
Oh, man, it's just been great, and the feedback from the chat rooms is just epic. Everybody's just thrilled that you're here, and they're just engrossed as I am. And it's been a great journey thus far. Now, you've been doing this, you said, for 28 years, I think you said. Is that right?
Just about 28 now.
28 years. So how many really, really dark, ugly things have you been involved with?
Every day.
Every day.
Essentially, the first 7 years of my business, 5, I did nothing but exorcisms. My concept was, if you have something bad in your home, I was in the Yellow Pages then after that, and did some radio shows. When I was doing morning shows in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I would go in, and it was kind of scary. I'd be driving my car and, we're going to have Jeffrey Seelman, the Exorcist, here in, half an hour, and I'm driving my car going, that's me. And so I would go into these radio stations. Mm-hmm. And Milwaukee is a very large city, actually. And there's it's a good city, lots of rock and roll stations and classic music stations and country music stations. And so it would be kind of a joke when I first came in. It's kind of like, oh yeah, an exorcist. Mm-hmm. But as I spoke, they would ask me sort of silly questions, to kind of get a rise out of the audience. Yeah. So what I would do is this, because I'm a very serious guy when it comes to this subject. And I would simply answer the question very quickly, which was essentially nonsensical, their question. So I'd answer their question to satisfy them. Then I would speak directly to the audience, 10, 15,000 people driving to work in the morning. They weren't laughing because I would say things like, most people, have some kind of story of walking into a room and feeling uncomfortable. of saying this place doesn't feel right. It might be a new apartment they moved into, or people have lived before, a home they rented, a business that doesn't feel right, no matter how much paint or redecoration they do in the restaurant or whatever business it is, large homes, small homes, whatever, apartments, like I said, condominiums. Most people have some kind of story of running into something unusual.
Mm-hmm.
That resonated and gelled with the audience, and I would go into more detail about these things. And so by the time I would leave these stations, it would be like, when are you coming back?
Yeah, I bet.
And I recorded all of these things. They're not on my website at the moment, but I'm putting together my new website, my third one, and they'll be on there because I do have all the recordings from those shows. And most of those stations don't even exist anymore and have changed in ownership and all that. And so, but I do have the recordings of my early radio shows as well. And it's kind of interesting to see how the progression, stark raving fear.
Right.
You couldn't tell it maybe in my voice, but I mean, here I am. I'm going to be in here for an hour. I felt like, wow, there's no place to go, and I've always had a fear of public speaking, not anymore, but I used to. And that's one way to get over it. And I always thought, my spirit guides kind of guided me into this business. And I felt that alien visitation was also part of this whole thing because I've been working with alien spirits throughout my career. And I talk about that in my first book, and which is an audiobook. I made it an audiobook deliberately.
Sure.
Because I'm a teacher, essentially. I'm better at speaking than I am at writing. And that way you don't have to turn back to page 7 and say, what did he say?
Right.
I repeat myself a few times so they get what I'm saying. So I decided to make it in that form. And anybody out there, if you're listening, just send me an email, and we'll give you my website in a while, but I'll send you a link to a free copy of it. I didn't write the book to make money. Yes, it's available on Amazon.com and in the UK and all over the world and iTunes and everything else. But I didn't really write it to make money. I wrote it to help people. It does include a chapter on my metaphysical history, but it really is a workbook on how to protect yourself from negative spirits, which is something I also teach in private sessions through Skype. So I did the really hard exorcisms, Brent, for several years. Mm-hmm. And then in 1997, I was approached by a group of spirits that came to me when I was down at the shores of Lake Michigan. And they said, do you want to join this larger organization? And I said, well, what is it? And they said, it's a group of spirits from many different planets that set people free. Wow. Essentially, we clear homes and keep people free as best we can, at least the worst cases of negative spirits. Then there are negative spirits out there, a lot of them. Mm-hmm. A percentage of people are negative, and a percentage of spirits are negative. And do you want to join this organization? We'll give you 3 days to make up your mind, because if you do join this organization, it's for the balance of your life. Mm. Because once you start down this road, you're going to become a target of negative spirits.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's quite a decision. But the benefits, they said, we'll help you and we'll train you and teach you how to do this even better than you're doing right now. You're obviously a natural, and things have been going on. You've done this before in past lives. Yes, we'll teach you more. It's your decision. I thought about it for 3 days. Mm-hmm. I decided, yes, I will do it. Now, they also said to me, you will receive no benefits from this after you die, that you're not going to get a desk job in heaven. So don't expect a parade when you get up here, because you must do this out of the goodness of your own heart and the willingness to help other people. That must be the motivation, because if it is for money, I mean, I charge a small fee because I have to live. I'm not affiliated with any churches or anything. Nobody pays a bill. No organization pays my rent. But I charge as little as I can. That's why I do, to help all people from all walks of life. But they said you're not going to be rewarded when you get to heaven. You still have to face any negative things that you do and all of that. And I still said yes. I said, I just want to help. I have this talent. I've always had it. I want to learn how to do it better. Mm-hmm. And I want to help people who are in distress, because that's what I have found in my work. And so I agreed to these terms. And later on, as years progressed, just to end this part of the story, he told me, by the way, Jeffrey, a couple years later on, I said, what could we offer a spirit? Spirits have everything. As a spirit, you can create anything you want. Mm-hmm. This is true of every human.
Sure.
So what could we offer you? What, do you want a parade? Do you want congratulations from a higher spirit, an angel or God? You want that? No. Do you want to sing in a heavenly choir? No, I can't sing a note. They're just going to pull the chute and I'm,
Yeah.
No, I can't. God does not want to hear me sing. Trust me. I was in Berlin last year and I met Steve Hackett he was the first guitarist in Genesis before the concert. We took some pictures and talked for a while at the Berlin Tempodrome. And he said, will you sing a few bars of a Genesis song that I wrote? And I said, Steve, I can't do it. Nobody else is in the concert hall. This is before the crowd in. Me, Steve, and the band manager. She was laughing. And I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And I knew all the words to all their songs. I'm a big fan of Genesis, and my favorite band is Yes. And I also love Pink Floyd. I'm a progressive rock and classic rock person. And what the real reason was, I was recording my second book. And that night after the concert, I was going to go back to the hotel in Berlin and actually do some audio work, and I had to save my voice, and that's why I didn't sing. I just didn't tell him that.
Oh.
And so essentially what happened was that after I made that choice, I started to get more visitations from spirits and teaching me how to do my work better. Mm. And there's lots of stories, and they're in my book, and too many to go through here tonight, but I'll go really quickly through the most, probably what your audience would consider to be the most startling one. Mm-hmm. In 2004, I did a radio show. It was a contest. And the business that had the most problems, it was the most famous country music station in the Midwest. And they had a contest. What business has the most negative energy? Jeffrey will come in and clear it. And it turns out that a bakery a gourmet bakery in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, actually won that contest. Essentially said, we have the worst problem. It feels really negative in here. Mm. And we got there, the radio station and me, and this guy had actually made, this is 2004, had made cakes for us with our pictures on it. Mm-hmm. That was very interesting. So that night I went home and I heard this voice in my head. And it said, Jeffrey, go outside. It was a fall night. Go outside and rededicate yourself to your business. I thought, okay. So I stepped outside. I was in a kind of a lower flat, a lower 2-bedroom thing. So I had to step up a few bit, kind of like Laverne and Shirley thing. And so I stepped up and I did this little 1-minute thing. I dedicate myself to my business, walked down into my apartment, sat down, completely awake, on no drugs or alcohol. And all of a sudden I was simply thrown up into midair. It was simply about maybe, about a foot off the floor or so. I forgot. And it's in the book. I remembered it back a little better when I wrote the book, but I mean, at least a foot or so. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell because I couldn't move. It was kind of like this for those of you watching the YouTube video. I was simply placed in midair like this, and I could not even move my head. I couldn't even move my eyes.
Oh, man.
I was off the ground. I was sweating bullets. I was terrified. I did not know what was going on. I thought I was dying or something. Mm-hmm. It was really hard on my body. So a number of things were happening at once. With my mind's eye, which is what people use to see the other side, spirits or anything happening on the non-physical side of reality, I saw a huge book with pages turning very fast with a bunch of symbols on each page. I also at the same time heard a male voice speaking in a foreign language and very quickly, and I couldn't understand the words, but I felt it had something to do with the book. I also felt a wind coming into my back and somebody pushing something into my back, like a pressure coming into my back.
Wow.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
After about 10 minutes of this, floating in midair, I remembered that I had done some work a few years earlier, some personal experiments with essentially standing there in the middle of a room, closing my eyes and turning my mind around to look at what was behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was my last resort to see what's going on here, because I was sweating bullets.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it might be having a heart attack or something. And my body was rushing. And I did that, and what I saw was a very long white bony hand, one hand, and a white robe hanging very low off that hand, pushing a disc into my back.
Oh, man.
Now I realized that was symbolism.
Okay.
A spirit was not pushing, or an alien or a spirit was not pushing a disc into my back. It was pushing some kind of information into me deep inside of me. It was doing that when I looked at it in order to let me know, because me working with CDs and DVDs or whatever, and watching them, to understand that it was pushing information into me.
Oh, cool.
It was not really putting a disc into my back. It was meant for me to understand that it was simply pushing information into me. After about 15 minutes, I simply screamed I had enough. Between the book giving me information, the voice giving me information, the wind, and this, whatever it was, spirit or alien pushing this into my back, I simply had enough physically and emotionally and on every level. And I screamed, I've had enough. Whatever it was, to let me go, and I just fell to the floor. And I really thank God I had carpet. I wasn't really high up in the air, but I landed on my feet and I fell to my knees, still sweating. I went into my office, which was a second bedroom. I put on CNN, the front page. Didn't even look at it. I was just kind of like, just sitting there and just, wow, either I'm going to die or this was something metaphysical. Now, other metaphysical things had happened to me before that, but I won't go into that so much tonight because it'll just take up the rest of the time. Mm-hmm. But nothing like that. That was the most physical thing that really ever happened to me up until that time. 2004, this happened, as I said. After half an hour, I started to feel something I normally don't feel, and that's euphoria. Normally, I feel okay. Mm-hmm. Things are not terrible. Things are not great. Wonderful. Everything's not wonderful. Everything's not terrible. It's kind of in between. That's how I usually am on your average day. But I felt like really, really good. Like really too good. And then I knew that essentially that this was a metaphysical thing that somebody had done to me, be it spirit or alien. I never did ask my spirit guides, who I'm able to communicate with, whether that was a spirit or an alien, or an alien spirit, meaning an alien who is dead or astral traveling and doing that to me.
Right.
Why? And people ask me all the time, why don't you ask? It does not matter. What matters is what they did to me. And what they did to me was they essentially put something deep inside of me, like a huge file folder, because I used to work with IT and internet technology. And so that's how I understand it, essentially, that they buried a huge amount of information deep inside of me that I can access when I need to do my work, teaching people how to protect themselves, clearing people, clearing property, clearing businesses. I can pull up this information at will, and I do so to this day.
Wow. That's really wild. You actually morphed on my screen as well, which is really bizarre.
Yeah, and so, they're always around. And so I was not something I did on purpose, whatever happened. I didn't see it from this end. But these are the kinds of things that happen to me. And I've had many things happen to me like that in different ways that increased my psychic ability and my ability to see the other side and to astral travel. In 2007, I did my first large radio show. And I don't know if I'm allowed to mention another radio show or not.
No problem at all. Go ahead.
Coast to Coast called me and wanted me to do a show. And they said, well, if Jeffrey, if George we'll give you half an hour. If George likes you, you can do an hour. And George liked me, and they gave me an hour. And what happened was I was just doing these hard jobs after work. I mean, I was really doing exorcisms only, essentially going into people's homes physically, not really touching anything, just bringing up energy from the other side. It's not a secret.
Sure.
And essentially, like a fire hose, clearing out emotional energy out of the structure of the home and out of the atmosphere and also out of people. I was working at different wellness centers and I had massage tables, and I had a person lie on a massage table. And I sit behind them and actually run this energy through them. It was not my energy. I was a catalyst. I was running energy from the other side, good positive energy that I could see was having an effect upon the negative energy that we all have and generate that is stored inside of us and out of people and out of the property. And I was still doing that. And that's still how I work. Now, what happened was that they'd asked me to come back the next year, this time for a 3-hour interview.
Cool.
So I did my first 3-hour interview with them and not my last.
Mm-hmm.
Last month, I did my 5th show with Coast to Coast. And so what happened was that now I started getting emails from all over the world.
I'll bet.
Now I had 500, 1,000 people contacting me saying, I'm having a problem in Belgium. I'm having a problem in Germany. I'm having a problem in China.
Wow.
And I'm having a problem in Central America, in Canada. And I said, what do I do?
Right.
The amount of money I charge for a clearing and the amount of money that it would cost me to fly there doesn't add up.
Mm-hmm.
How can I do this? So I realized something. I realized that when I did a clearing on a person, I really wasn't touching them. Maybe I'd lightly touch them once in a while on the sides of the head.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. When I went into somebody's house and I cleared their home, I touched nothing. Once in a while, I'd open up a door. I'd ask permission. Can I open closed doors? I don't open drawers or anything. I don't need to. I clear the entire drawer,
Right.
the entire unit, the entire dresser. But I was not touching anything. I was simply going through the home or the business. I was working on as many businesses as homes.
Wow.
Businesses have just as many problems as homes do. If you want to make money, clear out the negative energy, because that people will feel it.
Yeah.
They go into a business, they'll feel it. So the idea is that I was going through businesses and homes. I had ads in the paper and also in different in the Yellow Pages and different magazines around the area. But I wasn't touching anything. And so I realized that, okay, on the other side, there's no such thing as distance.
Right.
Distance is only measured in the physical realm.
Mm-hmm.
This is science. But there's also such a thing as non-physical science. And this is a realm I've been getting into over the years. And so I developed a technique to clear through pictures of the home, because each home is unique. No matter, even if they look the same, row houses.
Sure.
Each home has a unique vibrational content to it. The people who live there, the people who have been there, its history, the objects in the home, and also of businesses and also of people. So I said, if I can do that, if I can go through a home or a business, even large businesses, I was clearing hotels and restaurants and things like that, and successfully, and they were making a greater profit.
Oh, cool.
And so, because there's less negative energy, people would feel more comfortable and spend more money.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is that I learned how to do distance work. And when I had to,
Right.
because I was getting requests from
Around the world.
500 people around the world.
Yeah.
And so I started to do that. You use pictures and Skype eventually, and which is now what I like to use, Skype,
Mm-hmm.
pictures, and also the telephone, and kind of use sometimes a combination of all of them, especially with the picture and the telephone. Skype, it would not be necessary, with the telephone and Skype. But so I started to do that. I was batting about 65%.
Wow.
I would actually get some complaints. I don't feel this is completely clear, Jeffrey.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept on practicing, and I kept on doing more and more shows, and more national television shows, more national radio shows, and all of that, and practicing my techniques. Over the years, I practiced and practiced. So this is 2007 leading to 2008. Now this is 2018, 10 years later. Now I'm batting 99.9%.
Excellent.
And that's not my ego talking. It's just the fact is that I get very few emails saying, hey, the problem is not solved.
Sure.
The house, I'm getting emails, of course, saying the house feels great.
Those are the best.
Business feels great. We're making money again. Thank you so much. The house feels wonderful. It moved into the home. Doesn't feel right in here. It might be a mansion. It might be a small home.
Mm-hmm.
It might be a condo. It doesn't feel right. I can take care of that from right here.
That's
For
really
those
cool.
of you listening, you know, I'm in my living room at the moment. And for those of you watching on the YouTube, you know, you can see where I'm at. This is where I work from.
Yeah.
I also work when I'm traveling. I go to Europe sometimes. I'm writing books. I'm doing essays. I go to Europe. I'm traveling around the United States. I was in the Air Force. I was stationed at Nellis Air Force Base in Las Vegas for a long time at certain areas. And also that I went back to live in Las Vegas in 2014, but it was now that I'm in my 50s, late 50s, it was just too dry for me. I was kind of used to the heat, you know, but the dryness got to me, and I moved back to Milwaukee for a while, and I'll be here for a little bit of time, definitely. But the idea is that I can work from any place. I can plug in a computer.
That's
or a
very
telephone.
cool. And that's a great reach, but we're about to go to our last break of the night. It's just how fast it flies by here on the portal. We have our own little time anomaly here, but it makes sense that, you know, energy follows intention. I've heard that ever since I was a kid. My aunt would pound that into my head. It doesn't matter. Just think, send the energy. Energy will go where you intend it to go. So that's a very powerful thing. And it's really cool that you can extend your gifts so broad and wide. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been an epic show. We got 1/2 hour left to go, but we will be back in just a couple minutes here for the last half hour of the Paranormal Portal tonight with Jeffrey Seelman. Don't go away. I guess I should unmute myself. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Paranormal Portal. I'm Brent Thomas. And Jeffrey, we've got some requests. Are you open to taking calls?
I am.
Okay, yeah, guys, if you want to call in and ask Jeffrey a question, please do. Just try to keep it brief because there's, I'm sure, a number of you that want to. Actually, we got a call waiting right now. So if you're okay with it, I'll go right to that. Is that all right, Jeffrey?
Let's do it.
Okay. And this is area code 480. You're on the air.
Hi. This
Hi.
is Jessica Mink. Call me Jess. I had a question. How come there is so much negative energy in the world, and where does it originally manifest from?
Jess, that's a very good question. We don't treat each other very well, and I think that's where it really
I see that.
from.
Yeah.
You know, and so our power structure in this world, as I think we all know, is sort of a pyramid. You know, we have a few people controlling the many, and they are not nice to us, you know, and they seem to be becoming less nice as the years roll by, which is something I didn't expect when I was growing up in the 1960s or 70s. And so I
what's
think
going on? Why is it? Yeah.
Greed, profit, short-term thinking. Back in the 1970s, I thought for sure by 2015 we'd have renewable energy sources and cars running on, you know, non-polluting, energy and all of that. And it seems, you know, right at this time, we're moving away from that, and that's just terrible, you know. And I think people are becoming frustrated that they're not getting what they want. It's natural to retool.
They want what they want. They feel entitled, right?
Well,
they feel like entitled.
Yes, it's natural to retool a society into a technological age, but we're not retooling people, you know. And so the people losing jobs and health benefits and things like that. That's one thing. Our world's becoming more polluted, and people are becoming frightened of the changes, and are feeling less powerful and more out of control than ever. You know, that something else out there is controlling. And there's a lot of talk out there about the Illuminati, which I think is absolute nonsense. I don't believe, I believe that there are aliens populating the entire universe, both living and dead, just like there are spirits living on Earth and spirits. But the idea that spirits working with our government, there is no technology that we have, and my background is in technology, by the way. There's no technology that we have that has anything to do with any alien technology. You know, airplanes and in the internet and all the wonderful things that we're creating that we're still kind of working out issues with is just good hard work. And so, is there a conspiracy against people? Yeah, but it's by other people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And why is it so, is it going to become eventually a balanced world, or do you see a golden age coming sometime, or just not in our lifetime?
1% of the population owns 89% of the wealth, all the wealth in the world. We outnumber them. And so that's what they're afraid of. The idea is that if the powers that be, the people who actually own the world, own it, the property, okay, not the
I got you.
Okay. If they can get us to fight with each other, which is what's happening right now, then we don't look at them. So instead of us banding together,
and
we
saying, should be looking at them. Yeah.
This has got to stop. You do not have the right to destroy this world. You cannot pollute the planet. We're all going to die in 200 years if you continue this. They don't care. Mm-hmm. Well, we do. So the idea is separate us, get us fighting against each other, whether it be race, whether it be against country, people against people, family against family, politics, all of these things. They're getting us to fight against each other so we don't look at them.
Yeah. All right, Jess, thank you for your call.
That's too bad. Thanks for your answers.
Thank you, Jess.
Interesting insight.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. Okay, so You know, it's got to be an amazing experience. It's something that I've always been envious of personally. I've got a lot of empathy, but I am just really envious of someone that can see and communicate so freely and openly with the spirits. And we have several people that come on the show and our listeners as well that have been doing this. And it's so neat, the correlating information that you all bring, and how you guys all seem to have very, very similar understandings of all of this. And I find that absolutely incredible. And I think it really reinforces what you're saying, as so many other people have said similar things. And to me, that's just a strength of messaging, you know, that there is truth, and there are people bringing that truth, and hopefully it'll help to open all of our eyes.
I think we'll get through this because people are already beginning to see what's going on here, and that we're being driven apart, by a conspiracy, and it is going to stop. I think it's just going to take some time. Anger doesn't always dissipate right away, and right now we're kind of, I think, at the height of that. I hope we're very close to it. And pretty soon we're going to stop hating each other. Some of this stuff went on, I grew up in the 1960s. I grew up,
Sure.
My very first memory is of John F. Kennedy's funeral. And so I grew up with, Martin Luther King being assassinated. He was an incredible visionary. And also Bobby Kennedy, who probably would have been president of the United States. These were horrible things that happened. And also the Vietnam War is a senseless profit-making, thing where we lost, a huge country, lost a war that was really not meant to be, that nobody over there wanted, certainly.
Yeah.
And, both South or North Vietnam was just a terrible time, and a terrible time here in America, where the powers that be were being violent upon young people and people who disagreed with their philosophies. I mean, back when I was growing up, I've had short hair and long hair. If you look at my website, I go back and forth. But the idea is that back when I was growing up, if you had long hair, you were stopped by the police and very, very often beaten up.
Oh, wow.
I lived in a city, and just that they said, you're against the war.
Sure.
You have long hair. You're obviously a bad person. And how?
Man.
It happened to me.
No.
It happened to everybody I knew.
See, and I think that's really important that you're bringing that up, because I think we forget that this isn't our first rodeo, and I think a lot of people are extraordinarily afraid right now. But America has come through these times before, and maybe the world as well, in their own places in their history. They've been through terrible upheavals and stuff, and I think some people just feel so desperate, or just feel like they're losing hope, and it's like, you know what, we always make it through somehow, and maybe it's not our ideal version yet, but we're making little changes as we go, and just keep the faith and keep believing in that brighter tomorrow, and I think we'll eventually manifest it. But I have to ask you, Jeffrey, do you believe that some of these negative entities and beings feed on this kind of emotional charge? Do they actually gain a sustenance from it?
They do, and more importantly, they actually amplify it.
Okay.
So the feeding part of it is the easy part. Yes, they do feed off of negative energy. It does make them feel stronger, and they like to see things fall apart, sometimes just to get a good laugh. There's not always a big plan behind all of this as far as spirits go.
Okay.
Seeing us at war with each other. Sometimes it's just to do it. To say they can do it. I'd like to tell you that there's some big conspiracy going on, but it's really not true. Essentially, that a lot of this is being done, by individual negative spirits and also demonic spirits, and they do amplify our rage and anger towards each other. So what I would say is stop hating your neighbor.
Yeah.
And stop hating your neighbor for thinking differently than you do. When I was growing up in the 1960s and 70s, our neighbors around us, we had conservative neighbors and liberal neighbors and all this. This was still going on back then. We didn't talk about it at barbecues. We didn't talk about it when we played basketball together in each other's yards. We didn't talk about this at our block parties and stuff. We did talk about it, but we also understood that we're not supposed to think the same.
Right.
It's not required that we all believe in the same thing. It's okay to be conservative. It's okay to be liberal. It's okay to be, Republican or Democrat or whatever in whatever country you live in different political organizations you belong to. It's okay to think differently. The problem here is that we're not coming together and having, some kind of consensus of what we want to do and how to fix these problems. We're just, essentially, if you watch the 24-hour news cycle, as they call it, which, back when I was growing up, was just 3 channels and the national news was on half an hour once a night.
Yep.
And that was long enough.
I remember.
Half an hour was enough. The body count of the Vietnam War on the screen, 52 Americans dead, 350 North Vietnamese. It was like some sick football game. Walter Cronkite was on, this is the body count for today. Half an hour was over. The local news, and then on to the prime time. And right now, people are just being fed problems. If you watch the news, it's all negative, and there's no solutions offered. That's something that I think people should be very, very aware of. And I'm not trying to get into politics here. What I'm saying is that if you watch the news, if you notice, there's never any solutions offered.
Right.
Only problems. The body count, what this person said, what this person looks like, what this celebrity did last night that she shouldn't have done or he shouldn't have done, like that's any of our business. and so it's just problems. And we're being taught to hate each other, to mistrust each other. The other person is the enemy. So we dealt with it back in the 60s and 70s by not buying into that. And yes, negative spirits and demonic spirits, negative spirits being negative people who are dead and continue to do negative things, and demonic spirits who are much more powerful and essentially the counterpart of angels. And so you can imagine the power of them. And they essentially generate this anger and hatred and rage. And that permeates into our energy fields and pushes us into a greater anger and rage. And it's all subconscious. It happens on a non-physical level. We don't know what's happening. We can't see them. Maybe I can, but the idea is that most people can't. And I can, also feel them. And it's happening. And so it's a field day for negative spirits and demonic spirits right now. We just cannot buy into this anger and hatred anymore. We can work out these problems. We can solve these problems if we simply stop with the hatred talk.
Right. But there's so many spins on truth and on reality anymore that it's, that's the hard part, I think, for a lot of us, is just discerning where is truth in all of this, because we're all getting spins and slanted stories and slanted news cycles, and it's I think the biggest liability of our modern day is the truth, in that it seemed much simpler to discern what was truthful and what wasn't, but now truth is truly subjective.
That's just a game, because it's really not. The truth is truth. I mean, either yesterday was yesterday or it was not.
Right.
And there's no going around it. Spinning is a lie.
Sure.
Spinning is taking a truth and turning it into a lie and making a cover story about the truth. So truth is not subjective. Actually, an event happened or it did not happen.
Sure. Either
something was said by a person or it was not said by a person. The truth is not something that is wavers back and forth. There is no such thing. Fake news, the idea of that kind of thing, what we're talking about, all of that, that would be essentially a lie. So an event, either something happened or it didn't happen. So that would be truth, that either it happened or did not happen. So people can lie about it.
Right. And
they can lie until you're confused. And that's what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So many lies, like you say, spin is happening by the very people we're supposed to trust.
Right. Yeah.
That, it's just horrible. They're supposed to be helping us. The news people, the politicians are supposed to be on our side. Yeah. But they're really working for the people who really own the planet. I'm not saying they're all evil or anything like that.
No, I know.
But the fact is, they're thinking there's short-term thinking going on here. And they don't care about tomorrow. They're not caring about our grandchildren's future. or what happens if we continue to poison the planet, that their grandchildren are also not going to be able to breathe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
They're not thinking about that, they're thinking about short-term stuff. I saw, a conference on the energy conglomerates, and they were saying our first priority is to our shareholders. And I said, no, it's not.
No,
it is not. You have no right to destroy the planet.
Yeah.
Not for profit, not for money. It is not. Your first priority is to make energy, certainly, but you cannot destroy the planet. You do not have the right to destroy the earth. You do not own the earth. None of us own the earth. This human race does not own the earth. We just live here.
Right.
And if we continue to do what we're doing right now, we're not going to be living here for a very long period of time.
Yeah, amen. What do you think now, in terms of that? It just kind of brought up a thought to me, and I think it's definitely true. But do you feel that the planet itself has a consciousness? The Earth does it have a consciousness of its own?
My feeling is that it does not.
Okay.
But it is a collection of consciousness, meaning that there are so many different living beings, consciousness,
okay.
Awareness. Mm-hmm. On this world, underneath the world, in the ground, who knows what's going on, way down below.
Right.
Might be different things happening down there. But essentially, that it's kind of like the Earth is a physical thing.
Okay.
But also, it has non-physical properties to it that are scientific. So essentially, there's physical science and non-physical science. There's a physical universe and a non-physical universe. The non-physical universe is what people call heaven, hell, the beyond, whatever they want to call it, the terminology.
Sure.
So after studying this for an awful long time, I would say that the sun and the moon and the earth really don't have a consciousness themselves, but they do produce non-physical energies that can be used for a variety of purposes, both metaphysical and physical.
Okay. Now, we have like 8 minutes left. I just hope you can give people some best practices. What can they do to keep things quiet in their own homes? What can they do? What are some good do-it-yourself cleansing techniques that you can recommend? Any practices, things to look for, etc.?
Personally, we need to strengthen our energy fields, also known as the aura. The aura is sort of the outside part of our spirit. Mm-hmm. The spirit is you. When people ask me what the soul is, what the soul looks like, to me it looks like living lights that are kind of crunched up inside of a person. That changes when they die. But the idea is that you need to strengthen your energy fields in order to protect yourself from the worst problem that we have here on the earth, and that is not negative spirits and demonic spirits. That is people who are generating anger, whether they're subconsciously or in the dream state or in the waking state, and getting us to hate each other and be enemies with each other. And that is producing a non-physical energy that corresponds. Anger is, an emotion. Mm-hmm. Emotions have a real energy that corresponds to them. And so we need to learn how to protect ourselves. And these are one of the things that I teach. I teach essentially how to create 5 different kinds of shields that you can bring up in essentially 5 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So I studied all this stuff back, what they were doing back in the 60s and hundreds of years ago. And I thought, we can't do these exercises anymore. Nobody's got 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening. Plus, it only lasts a while. So I developed, with the help of my spirit guides, techniques to teach people to bring up successful multi-layered protection techniques that you can do at home and at work, when you're out at movies, at restaurants, whatever, when you're walking into that grocery store, which is not so much fun anymore, in 5 seconds. And it works. And so I teach people how to do this. And also in the home, I teach people how to clear their homes, because you can clear your own home. Each person has psychic ability. Why? Because each person is partially a spirit. All spirits communicate with telepathy. They can produce sounds that sound like sound to each other, or maybe to you, but essentially it is actually produced through telepathy. And actually, that's the first step of any sound that you make. Your mind must create that thought first. That works its way up into your vocal cords and out your mouth. So you must protect yourself, and there are ways you can learn to clear your home. And of course, there's the old standbys, which are really good, sage and frankincense. But the problem with just doing that is that it's kind of like spraying your walls with a cleanser. Sure, it'll move around some of the emotional energy, but it's not going to release it from the home. It's not going to push it out of the home. So the techniques that I teach people, actually, I teach people how to push the negative energy out of the home, because negative energy doesn't weigh anything. It's not like it's that hard to do. People just don't know how to do it. The idea is that you can use non-physical energies that have a non-physical effect upon non-physical energies. So essentially, all you're trying to do is move negative emotional energy or negative spirits out of your home or business or homes or whatever, and any place where you are. And so if you're using the techniques, you're bringing up I teach how to bring up non-physical energies, the same thing that spirits do to create their vision, their appearance. How spirits, they die when they're 80, but now they look like they're 20.
Yeah.
They do that by visualization and creation. It's very easy to do. And I teach people how to bring up that energy from the other side, not through me, but through the other side, and use that to clear themselves and also their homes. Because I'm not going to be around forever.
Right.
I'm 59, so I teach people how to do this. And so I do that through Skype and all of that, and through telephone, and any way you'd like it done. That's the two best ways, really, telephone and Skype. And also I do clearings on homes if they need it, and through pictures and Skype, and through telephone if I absolutely have to. A little bit harder to do that. It's hard to do it anyway, through distance. It's easier to clear something that, and you're right there.
Right.
Working at something like with a picture or through Skype, I'm clearing something 6,000 miles away, somebody's home. It's not the distance. It's the idea that I have very little to work with.
Right.
So I really got to focus, and that's a different thing that I teach people, and I don't teach everybody that. And so that's for people who, because when you start doing that, you start getting into protecting other people, and you make enemies and with non-physical negative spirits.
Right. Yeah, I bet they
And
don't
the
like
work
you.
that I do, I can tell you that, it's very important that I protect myself, because, I am definitely on their hit list and have been for probably my whole life,
Yeah.
And I do get attacked and have been attacked, and I've been attacked successfully. I make no bones about that, and it's not when I'm working, it's when I'm not working.
Sure.
It's when I've been out socializing and I'm not paying any attention at things if something
Boom. Yeah.
hits me.
Yeah.
It's only happened a number of times, but it's happened.
Yeah. Now we got about 2.5 minutes left, and I definitely want you to have a chance to let people know how to keep up with you, where to find your book, and how to get in touch with you if they need to. So please let us know what is the best way to do that.
My book is called Power Protection. It was recorded in Chicago in 2013, and you can get it on Amazon.com, Amazon UK. .uk, and also Audible and other venues. Also, anybody who takes any of my services, which are very, very fairly priced. If you're wondering why they're so low, it's because I want to help everybody. Okay, that's the reason I keep them low, because I help people from all walks of life, and that's the way I chose to live my life. I could charge more, but I don't. And so if you want to get a hold of me, my website is starclear.com. Starclear.com. STARCLEAR. Starclear. All one word. Starclear.com. And on that, you can find my Skype address, my telephone numbers, where to send pictures and text. I do not charge for consultations, which means if you call me, I want to see if you even need my help. That I don't charge people to find out if they need my help. So please contact me and find out if you need, my assistance, or you just have some questions or stuff, I'd be happy to answer them. It's not right to charge people to see if they just need my help. Right. I feel, and so, and also, when I do some radio shows, and like this one, which is an excellent show, I offer, this for people who are listening, and also podcasting in the future, that if you send me, my email address is on my website on every page. Every page has got all my contact information on it.
Okay, 10 seconds
and I even
left.
have a contact page. And so basically, if you send it an email asking for my book, I'll send you a link to my audiobook, and you can have it for free.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for being here. Everybody, we love you. Be good, be kind, be nice. Take care of each other, and stick around for Nikki Colombo coming up next. And we will be back tomorrow night with guest Christopher Everard here on the Paranormal Portal. You guys have a great night. Love you all.